And for us to start our conversation, Lynn, it's lovely to have you and welcome to today's discussion.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to have an opportunity to support, our industry and professionals and students and anyone that can really benefit from any advice, to further their career or, academic studies. So thank you for inviting me to the platform, and I really look forward to sharing my experience to our audience here.
Thank you very much. So I would like to ask, when you got our invitation, what crossed your mind? Do you feel like, who are these people? Where did they come from? Tell us what crossed your mind when you got our invitation.
Yes, that's an amazing question. So I actually was already in touch with Talia, which is part of the AfriMine organization, as part of some projects that we were working in regards, to mining engineering as well in Africa, but with the Society for Mining, Metallurgy and Exploration. So it didn't struck me as a surprise to receive an invitation from him about AfriMine and having an opportunity to share my experience. Yes, so to me, it was just normal to be able to share the knowledge with, some of my peers in Africa and across the world, right? And it's an honor to have my own part of the contribution to our industry back home. So not a surprise at all, just curious to understand what AfriMine was about, the genesis of the organization, who were involved in it, in, forming it and developing it to where it is right now. But that's an amazing job, an amazing journey that Toby and the rest of the team is really engaging into. So kudos.
Thank you very much for those kind words. It's been a journey, and thank you for being a part of it. So just to go straight into conversation, would you like to introduce yourself and probably tell us a little bit about your journey into the mining industry and let us know about it. Thank you.
Absolutely. As previously mentioned in my bio just a few minutes ago, I'm originally from Cameroon in Central Africa. So I spent most of my life living in countries in Africa and also in France. So I lived in Senegal, in Mali, and then a little bit in France, at different stages of my life. So ultimately, I ended up having my high school degree in Cameroon, after which I had to decide where I wanted to do my mining engineering studies. So at that point, when I finished my high school degree, I already knew I wanted to get involved in, mining engineering, or at least the energy sector, right? So my experience with mining is it's kind of a funny one, actually. So I was actually influenced by, the media, and a little bit by my father, who was an engineer too, but he was mostly a mechanical engineer that worked on petroleum engineering platform in Australia and then went into computer engineering. So I had a little bit of influence coming from him as well, but mostly it was media. So what ended up happening is that I was really passionate about one of a South African show called Jacob's Cross. I think at the time he was airing on, you remember the show, right? Yes. On Canal Plus, back home. And the whole family was involved in natural gas, and had a little bit of involvement in, the diamond industry of the country. And there was, the entire family, their dynamics and what it took in order to run a mining, company, or mining, all the intricacies, right? Like the workers going into a strike, all the leadership and management that was really involved in like running, in natural, a petroleum, natural and gas company, or, with a little bit of involvement in diamonds. So I think that's really how everything started, if I have to be honest with myself. Surely I did have interest in anything that was related to soil. I wasn't sure if I was going to do agriculture or geology or mining or petroleum, but what I knew is that ultimately I wanted to take on the challenge of being in a male dominated industry. That was ultimately the goal. Now, my father had a little bit of input on my end because he had already been involved in the petroleum industry, and he saw the decline of the industry right when I was about to start my studies. So instead of going into petroleum, he basically advised me to maybe consider mining. And with the influence of, the show that I had watched, this is basically just how I made up my mind in going into mining as a young woman. So at that point, when I graduated in 2013, in 2012, actually, I had already made up my mind. My dad was in full support, despite the concerns, right? You're sending a 16 years old lady to the United States with no support, no family, no person to advise me on what to do. So that, I mean, we are all African here, right? So, or at least from parts of the world where it's a concern to send a kid, abroad with no leadership. So that was a concern, but I think my parents had a lot of faith in me, and they knew my abilities at a very young age. So I'm really fortunate to be one of the kids that, had the full trust, the complete trust of their parents, right? Because I know a lot of people in the world that want to achieve so much, but just the fact that your natural environment doesn't believe in your dreams, that can have, a little bit of of how do you say that? It's a little it can bring a little bit of discourage in whatever you're trying to accomplish. So at that time when I moved to the US, I started in Houston, Texas. That was when I had to start my studies and really make up my mind about petroleum, which is really the main economy in Texas, right? Or going to mining. So that's a little bit of the story, right? And I started in a community college. I did my general engineering courses there for about 2 years. And then once I was ready to move into the full, university, experience, I definitely moved from Texas to, Maryland, Washington, D.C. area. Then I went to West Virginia University because the United States only has about 15 mining schools, which was a decline from about 25 mining schools that we had back in the days in the 1980s, right? So now we're back to 15 mining schools. So the choice is very limited, right? And I chose West Virginia University, where I basically got the degrees in mining engineering, civil and environmental engineering.
Yes, thank you very much for that beautiful introduction. That is one of the strangest way I've heard people get into mining, to be sincere, because honestly, when I was growing up, it was the reverse. So when I hear about mining, I hear about mine collapse, I hear about community clashes. But yours came through media, and I do remember that show. It was very, very interesting to have learned that you picked up interest from that particular show. So one thing you said when you were conversing was that your dad advised you against coming into the oil industry, knowing that the industry is in decline. And I'm sure this was some close to 7 years ago. So what are your thoughts about that space now? Do you think that the oil is still continuing to decline? And do you think mining industry is going to replace the oil industry? Because just share your thoughts on that.
I don't I For me, I'm a strong believer that each commodity has its place, right? Depending on the industry, or should I say the country, the sector of activity of that industry in the country. We have countries that are trying to be sustainable with solar energy and all these wind power across the U.S. and other parts of the world. But what's the reality in countries, for example, in Africa, that are still trying to manage oil and gas and the cost of it, right, in the economy for, the average, African living in that country. So I think for me, it's really important for each, country to approach the oil and gas question with respects to their current economy, state of economy, right? So I'm not in the belief that, mining is going to replace oil and gas, or oil and gas is going to replace mining. I just think it's important to really factor in sustainability in everything we do. So if you are in a country, in a developing country that still needs the oil and gas resources, in order to keep the economy growing, I think it's important to just, consider sustainability in everything we do, right? Like improve the way we perform all our oil and gas activities as well as mining activities with respect to what the legacy is for the future generations. And this is what I call conscious mining, right? This is what I call conscious oil and gas, which I know a lot of companies nowadays are looking into, right? In the mining space, you hear of battery electric vehicle in order to reduce the, the emission, the greenhouse gases emission. You hear, of technology in order to improve safety, right? So I feel like most companies nowadays are really, focusing in the space of like sustainability, because they do understand that it's not by magic, it's a transitional process, right? We're not going to just instantly replace the impact of mining or oil and gas, in the economy in which we find ourselves. It's just a matter of really, thinking about sustainability and, future legacy for, the generations coming after us.
Yes, that's very interesting view on that, and the fact that mining has to play a very significant role in that sustainability is also very interesting, because typically, literally all the minerals that is needed for sustainability and renewable is mining dependent. So that's beautiful. So you talked about you selecting 1 out of 15 schools, and do you mind sharing very briefly how that selection was made? Because I know there were other options for you to consider, particularly in that space. How did you make that option? I'm sure many of us can relate. In Nigeria, for instance, when I got into mining engineering, it was just one university, so I had no choice. Just go into this one university. So how did you select the one you wanted to attend?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. So out of the 15 schools, I think one of my first criteria was basically to have an opportunity to, do multiple degrees. And at the time when I looked into the 15 programs, I think at the time it was only about 2 or 3 schools that gave me the opportunity to, do my multiple degrees, right? Because again, when I started my studies, we had the mining industry was just recovering from a crash that happened, right? So it was important for me to still consider other options, right? It's like, okay, I really love mining, but at the end of the day, I need an employment opportunity. So if mining doesn't work out, I need to have a backup plan, a degree that would allow me to find more, opportunities in a more, stable, I guess, industry. And that's the reason why at the time when I chose mining engineering, I really had a lot of interest in civil too, because it was all about the soil, right? And construction more specifically in the civil space, as well as the environmental side of things. So to me, West Virginia University gave me the opportunity of combining all these degrees, while I was finishing my studies there. So what ended up happening is that West Virginia main economy at the time was coal mining, right? And yes, coal mining, as we all know, is definitely one of the hardest commodity to mine in the world. One of the hardest one, right? To be conservative. So to me, I just thought about the fact that if I'm able to understand the processes to mine surface and underground coal, it would be easier for me to adapt if I had to, migrate into other side of the industry, like industrial minerals, metals, right, or aggregates. So for me, it was just making sure that I had an opportunity to, understand the hardcore principles, for, the toughest commodity, and then it will be easier for me to transition rather than the opposite, right? So West Virginia ended up being the first choice, because first I knew I could finish my degree in 5 years, meaning 2 years of community college and another 2 years and a half, rather than trying to do 2 degrees in like 6 years, for example, or 7 years. So that's basically how I made up my mind to be in West Virginia. Although, I heard a lot of feedback from friends and, people that were concerned about the state, right? Because West Virginia is very particular, it's a very particular state that didn't see much immigrant intrusion, right? I would say, compared to state like New York that have a huge diversity, or a state like Texas that are very diverse, right? Or California. West Virginia is one that didn't have the penetration of a lot of immigrants. So there was, there were some concerns, with respects to that. But at the end of the day, it's about resilience, right? In everything you do, you have to put your goals first, right? What you're trying to achieve definitely are the measure of success, or the measure of what should, give you incentives to, take on challenges. And for me, the challenge was mainly living there, number one. And then number two, finishing my degree, right? So I had basic living challenges, first of all, right? How to survive, how to live in West Virginia. And then number two, how to make sure I completed my degree.
Yes, obviously, you from the way you spoke about it, we could see that resilience is part of you, and you mentioned earlier that you wanted to survive in a male-dominated industry. So I think it's something that we can take away from today's conversation. It's important for you to have your goals and be resilient about it. But beyond that, you moved on to getting an internship with Freeman Port. Do you mind explaining to us what that experience is like? And to the best of my knowledge, they major in copper as commodity rather than coal. So how did you transition from the coal-dominated, environment to a copper industry, and why did you decide to go into copper or into that space? And how did that happen too?
Yes. So Toby, yes, you keep asking great questions. Interesting. So at the time when I had to get an internship, coal mining companies were filing for bankruptcy in West Virginia. Yes. We have at least 5 major coal mining companies that I know of, that basically were filing for bankruptcy at the time when I was looking for internship opportunities. So coal was not an option for me. I had to find other ways, right? So I started looking at internships in the aggregate sector, looking to work for Vulcan Materials or Martin Marietta, the 2 major, aggregate companies here in the US. Or the other option was mining and metals, right? And Freeport-McMoRan is, the largest US copper producer here. So to me, it was like, okay, either I go into aggregates or I go into metals, right? But the most important for me is to secure, an internship and being flexible and adaptable. Be flexible and adaptable, because in life, you're always going to have plans and they will not always execute themselves as you expect them to go, right? So then this is where networking comes in play, Toby. It's important. If there's one thing that you need to remember from this call, gentlemen, ladies, I know you have extensive, knowledge in geology, in mining, in metallurgy, coal processes, in mine planning, geomechanics. I know that I too have it, but I can guarantee you that without networking, it's going to be 3 times as hard for you to achieve what you could have achieved in a lesser period of time if you knew the right people. So if there's one thing that I want you to remember out of this call, aside from everything else that I'm going to share with you, is network. Get your network, in place to, progress your career and aspiration. Get your network. So coming back to the networking point, Toby, how did I secure my internship with Freeport? My department chair was a huge advocate of myself. He knew where I was coming from, all the challenges that I went through. And again, I was really fortunate that my parents were able to sponsor my education in the US as an international student, right? So I had one less challenge to worry about. But, what ended up happening is that my department chair was aware of, few of the economical challenges that happened in the meantime, and how it would impact me. So he basically shared with me some scholarship opportunities to apply to, which I did, and I received many of them. I mean, there's a whole list at SME, at my university, West Virginia University, right? So many of them that I received that were able to allow me to further my studies till the end, considering that I was doing multiple degrees, right? So there's that. And then number 2, he was a huge advocate for me to get professional experience. So at SME, they already knew me as someone who was fully engaged, received many scholarship, received a presidential award. They knew me. So it was very easy for my department chair and his connection, because he had been doing research for about 30 years and being involved at SME for the whole of his career. And I'm telling you, I'm talking to you about a 75-year-old man that spent his entire career in mining, right? And had all the connections. So he basically introduced me to the chief operating officer of Freeport-McMoRan, who is Red Conger, Harry Red Conger. And this is how everything started, right? I basically had, a conversation with the man, and he was able to refer me to his lead human resources recruiter that, started the process for me to get an internship interview, right? Get an interview, convince them that I was the right profile, after which I landed the internship at Freeport-McMoRan.
Beautiful. So that was a very interesting part of it, because you mentioned the part of having to meet the right people and having to work with the right people. You particularly mentioned two things that I think I picked up from this was working with the right people and also getting involved with organizations. So do you mind to explain to us what it is to work? Because some people don't know, how do I network? I'm still a very young student. I don't know how to network. What tools can we use? How can we get to build our network to what we have currently?
That makes sense, Toby. So I would say, as you're venturing the path of networking, I hear a little bit of background here, Toby.
Can we mute our mic?
Okay, so yes, so as you're starting your experience of networking with people, right? It's important to position yourself as, a candidate, or I would say a student that has very diverse experiences, right? Not only the academic experience, but some sort of leadership experience. It's important for you to, separate yourself from the rest of the pool, if I can put it that way. What makes you different, right, from all these other engineering students that are involved, with their really concerned focusing on their academia, right? So it's important for you to get involved in activities that would set you apart from everybody else. And when I say activities, I mean, it could be volunteering experience, right, in some of the organizations that you have in your university, or some of the professional organization that you have in your local region or country. So let's say, I was a student in Cameroon or Nigeria, because again, I have to consider, the geographical context, right? So if I'm in school, it's important for me to really spend some time with my professors, learn about their, experience, right? What led them into being in academia? What other technical experience they have, and what have they found out about the mining industry? The first thing for me, I was always very close to my professors, asking them about different experiences, asking them about the contacts in the industry that they had, that they knew of, number one. So I always spent like an hour per week, or per month even, with, some of my professors, even my department chair. I was in his office almost every day, just to share, my experience with the classes and what he thinks, and, the people that he knows in the industry that can assist me with some of the challenges that I have, or some of the things that I would like to have more practical experience, right? Number one. Then number two, it was definitely get closer to the professional organization locally. It could be the you as the professor organization, the mining professor organization, right? Do they have monthly meetings or weekly meetings that I can attend? How can I contribute to those, professional organization? How can I help the students that are my peers connect better with the professors, right? In making sure that the professor basically teach them relevant skills. That's an example, right, of things that could be potentially done. And then number three, other volunteering experiences, leadership experiences, right? Whether it's even volunteering for the local causes, right? What are the main issues that are happening in your country? Try to identify them, try to work with some of the organizations that are helping to solve those issues, right? and watch it being one of the leadership skills that you can present in front of those industry experts to get you at least in the front door of what you need. Because if I translate what I'm telling you in my experience, what I did is, as I said, right, spending time with my professors at school and my department chair to tell them about my story, my experience, and what my aspirations are in the next 5 years. So I built a plan for myself in the next 5 years of finishing my degree and where I saw myself in 5 years, right? And having all these people, my army, I call them my army, helping me achieve those objectives and goals with their network, right? Number one. And then getting involved in the Society for Mining, Metallurgy, and Exploration, where I basically volunteer in the Mining and Exploration Committee. They have a mining engineering magazine. They have meetings where they need, more young mining engineers to contribute to, because remember, a lot of the people are old here in the US and they're retiring. So they need young leaders to take over and lead the next generation of mining, which is about technology and sustainability, right? So for me, I got the door, the foot at the door when I was able to get involved in those committee meetings, right? Get involved in the SME student chapter at my school.
Beautiful. So
yeah.
So thank you very much for that expansion. So you just mentioned two things now. One is skill is never going to be enough. So as much as you have skill and as much as you have the knowledge, it is important to build that network. And you expressly explained to us what it is to build a network. It's as simple as visiting your professors or your lecturers and speaking to them and telling them what you want to achieve and leverage and stand on their shoulders to achieve whatever you want to achieve. That's things. So I want to ask, is it possibly the same way you got your position in Caterpillar, or how did you transition from having your internship into getting your first job? And
yes, that's a great question, Toby. So after I did the diverse internships, right? I did some research, in coal mining. We were trying to find rare earth minerals and try to extract it out of coal in order to help the economy. I did, a commercial management internship as well as a mining engineering. So with that experience combined, I actually was able to start interviewing before graduation. So I graduated in May 2018, but I started interviewing, looking for a position since September the year before, in 2017. So a year before graduation, I was already looking for my opportunity. The good thing is that here in the United States, they give you conditional offers, right? Meaning that I will give you a position, at the condition that you complete your degree as you mentioned you would have completed. So me having the opportunity to start networking and looking for jobs in September, October 2017 put me ahead of the entire student group that waited until graduation before looking for a job. So for me, having, the 3 internship experiences, right? Research, commercial management and mining technical internship, engineering, and having a network of people that I could talk to basically know what companies were looking to recruit. That set me apart. Because at school, for example, I started interviewing with Martin Marietta, that was in aggregate mining. So I interviewed with them at part of school because we did have a career fair program that basically allowed our school to bring multiple, companies in order to interview students. But the department chair still needed to put recommendation forward for their best top talents. That's the thing. You still need the recommendation of the department chair in order to have the opportunity to interview. So keep your grades up, right, to be considered. So number 2, my network at SME basically had me the opportunity to meet some people that knew me from the award I won at SME and scholarships from Caterpillar. So these people approached me and they basically asked me if I already had a full-time opportunity. And this happened in February 2018. Knowing that I had already secured a job as of November 2017 with Metso, which is another, non-mobile equipment manufacturing company. Yes, so Metso had hired me as an engineer in training development program, in their company, and I was supposed to start post-graduation in May 2018. So I already had my job lined up. after all the interviews I went through, I accepted the job, the position. But then when I attended SME, in Denver, and I met some of these Caterpillar, representatives that basically were interested in having me join the mining technical development program, right? They needed top talent to join the MTDP program. That's basically how, again, network at SME helped me secure my interview with Caterpillar for about 4 days and, accepting the offer to relocate to Tucson, Arizona.
Correct. Thank you. And that's a very interesting journey, because you just mentioned briefly now something that was not on your bio, that you had 3 internships. And first, I can assume at this point that it is basically based on of course your skill, but also on the network that you have. Then also, while explaining this one, you did mention too that you went for an event, or you went for several events, you appeared at several events. So are you saying or advocating that it is important for us to, as much as we love academics, also go for events and conferences where you get to meet people?
Yes, Toby. Get your grades up. It's 3 things, right? Get your grades up, get the best grades you can get. Work on your technical skills the most, get the best technical skills you can get, wherever you can.
Yes.
And number 3, network. It's a combo of 3 things. And I promise you, if you find the right combo, the right sauce, as I call it, it's a sauce. You put ingredients, it works out, you cook the ingredients, and then boom, you have a nice, tomato sauce, right? So you need your grades, your technical skills that, comes with different experiences. It can be research, right, in mining, like I did in school. I did research in school, as I mentioned, right, my assistant internship position, right? So you can even start working at school, in your school, or even try to find any local opportunities that you can get, right? Get your technical knowledge, but then make sure you network. Ultimately, make sure you network. I'm not saying that not having the technical knowledge, but the network will help you. What I'm saying is that network will help you achieve something that you would have achieved in 10 years. Network will help you achieve it in 3 years or 4 years even. That's my point. My point is that as much as you have all the degrees you want, all the technical knowledge, if you don't have network, your career might go a little slower, or your ambitions might go a little slower than they would have, if you knew people, basically.
Right, thank you very much. So now, speaking about the technical aspect of your career, you currently work with Caterpillar. So in that company, it's a very huge company with presence in technically all the continents. So tell us, what does your job entail, and what do you do in that position that you're in, and what position are you in?
Absolutely, Toby. So at the moment, when I started with the mining technical development program, they basically run us through equipment management principles, right? So I did 1 year of rotation with our equipment management team, as well as continuous improvement team, right? So making sure that we continue delivering value and improvement to the customer on site in various aspects of their mining operations, number 1. So I was involved in a lot of continuous improvement projects there. So production studies, assessment of their mine site, condition, contamination control, right? We know contamination is a huge issue in our industry, right? So a contamination control audit around their maintenance and repair shop, right? I did all these different things. And then after that, I did a little bit of equipment management in the sense where I needed to understand the maintenance and repair basic principles, as well as the key performance indicators, metrics that our miners use in their company in order to track production and track, maintenance and repair, on site, right? So I did that. Then after that, I went into the global accounts team. So the global accounts team here in the company basically gave me the principles of what it means to manage a customer account globally. So example, Newmont is a global customer, right? They have mine sites in Ghana. They have mine sites in the US, and so many other parts of the world. So how do you manage the expectation of a global customer? So the customer is telling you, I need consistency across the world in my operations. How can Caterpillar and their network help me achieve the consistent results that I need across my operations in the world? So managing those, customer interactions globally is key when you work for a global company. So I went through all these. Then I did a rotation with the mining technology team, here in Tucson, that basically gave me the basic knowledge of our entire mining technology portfolio, right? Whether it's on productivity, whether it's in safety, or even equipment management. So I did all of that, understand the basic principle. What does it take in order to install technology, on the customer side? What change management training do we need to provide to them in order to help them walk in the journey of moving from, a manual mindset that does everything with human people and processes are very manual into an automated, mindset. Then after securing all these rotation opportunities that I did for about 2 years and a half, I landed my position, in the MindStar Health, which is the equipment management technologies group. Again, having done so much equipment management, continuous improvement, experience and exposure. So at the moment, I do a lot of things. So it starts with, the introduction of new technologies in the market, right? So I work in that space in the sense where I basically provide all the technical requirements and documentations that is needed to, help the dealers, introduce a new technology to their customers and the market, right? So number one, it's a little bit of, support in the product ownership, product technology ownership space, right? And then number two, I'm also involved in the technical, I'm a technical specialist in the sense where I help our customers understand all the hardware, all the softwares, and anything that is required from, sorry, there's a little bit of background here. Can we have people mute it off? So I basically help our customers with any hardware and software that is required to get the data off their machines, right? How do we make sure we extract data from the machines that we have on site in order to run a predictive analysis, a condition monitoring model, right? And basically visualize our data in order to understand the repair recommendations that are needed. How do you help the customer in that, phase of transition? Then obviously I'm also involved in sales, right? Because if you understand the technical aspect, you're the one person that they definitely need in the sales side to sell because you understand what is important exactly. So I also help with the sales in, in Europe, in Africa, Middle East, and the CIS region, right? I help in that as well. But then also, once we do all that process, right, you think about it as a value chain. You make the product, you help the product go into the market, you sell the product, but then you also consult with the customer to make sure the product is working with them and getting their feedback back to your company, right? So I'm also involved in a little bit of like, customer feedback collection, customer satisfaction, in making sure that everything we provide to them is working. And if there's any improvement, technical improvement that they need for the technology product that they're using on their side, we get that information and we basically go back internally, review it with the team and make sure we include it in the future releases for the product. And also product training, right? Making sure you train the customer to use the product, efficiently in order to get the most value out of it. So it's a whole loop that I get involved in.
So, of these several loops, I'm sure as human beings, there's always a favorite. So, which of them do you prefer? Is it the sales? Is it the technicality? Is it the research or the development? Or what is it that interests you the most?
I think for me, definitely, I'm a people person, right? I love being technical because it gives me the credibility and the confidence I need in order to talk in front of a group of people. So for me, being the person that people consult, so being your consulting specialist, right, is really what I value the most. And being on the consulting side is basically both what you can call the technical phase because people consult you technically, but also on the sales space because it's like, okay, I need to know, the pricing requirements to put together the offer, the proposal to the customer, right? So for me, I do value both actually. The most important for me is to be able to be seen or being valued as the consultant for the customer, whether it's on the technical side, which, I do a lot, or even on the commercial side because I can help them achieve, the goals that they have within our dealer network Caterpillar, to our customers.
It's beautiful. So you mentioned a couple of things now with regards to the people you work with in the office. I think we'd like to know more about the people you work with, because I think beyond the experience and the job and the role itself, it's always it's always about the people you work with that gives you joy at work. So as a mine engineer or as a consultant, as a specialist, as a salesperson, what are the people that you get to work with in your position? One that was obvious is the client, but beyond the client, particularly in the office, what is the experience?
In the office, yes, I get to interact with our software developers because they are the one who make, you know, the technology, right? They help us basically, they get the requirements that we need, and then they help us code the technology. I get to work with our engineering team, right? Whether it's the machine engineers, because sometimes the machine engineers have information that we need on the technology side in order to hook up whatever hardware and software is needed on the machine. So I get to work, you know, to interact to some extent with the machine engineers, but also the technology engineers as well, right? So that we can work out the best of both worlds for the customer. Then I also get to work with the marketing team because I am involved in sales as well, right? So I need to make sure we position the product the right way for marketing purposes. I get to work with the legal team because the legal team, I work with them because I'm responsible for the agreements that need to be put in place for the customer when they're purchasing technology. Because you think about intellectual property, you think about, you know, intellectual property, right, and what it entails. So I get to work with the legal team as well, right, to some extent. Yes, I do. Then I also, of course, there's me in the space of technical and commercial consultancy to the dealer. I get to work with our dealer network because our dealer are the partners that we have to work with locally to assist the customer, right? So they're basically our eyes and ears locally for that customer. They get to tell us everything about the customer on the personal level. When I say personal, it means like people level, you know, how they are. And they also get to tell us what mindset challenges they have and technical, you know, requirements that the customer needs. So I get to partner a lots with the dealer network to make sure.
Very extensive. It is very extensive, I can see. But I was most surprised that you work with the legal team. I didn't expect that. I was expecting, yes, it was marketing too was also surprising, but it's interesting. So you can say that as a mining engineer, there's a chance for you to work with a broad and extensive group of people, depending on the company you work with. And if you're working with a equipment manufacturer like yourself, there's a chance that you work with this set of people too, particularly in your position. So thank you very much for that exposition. So lastly, before we round up, you touched a little bit about your volunteering experience earlier. So I just want to ask this one question. You've talked about how it helped you secure your internship, your job, how you went for the events, and you got, you know, awards and all of those things. So do you think there is a downside to this volunteering experiences?
To me, absolutely not. I think it's you know, volunteering is just about time management. How do you manage your time, right? There's 24 hours in a day for Bill Gates. There's 24 hours in a day for Line-Audrey. There's 24 hours in a day for Tobi. How do you manage your time? Because Bill Gates in 24 hours, he still manages to be one of the richest person in the world, right? So if he can manage all the expectation of philanthropy, he's a philanthropist, right? But also being involved in managing his company, then I'm sure LineAudrey can do the same in managing the expectation and time commitments it takes for work, personal life, as well as volunteering experience and extra leadership experience, right? So for me, it's a balance, time management balance. If you're good at time management and project management, you shouldn't see any inconvenience in sparing some of your time in order to be able to volunteer and, you know, give back to the community, right? Because I'm a product of a lot of people's contribution, whether it's the scholarship I receive, whether it's the advice I receive from the people in the industry, whether it's the internship opportunities that I had from meeting a lot of people, whether it's my own contribution to myself or even my family support, right? I am a product of a lot of people's contribution, mainly mine, but I have to recognize all these other people that, you know, made sure I got to where I am. So to me, it's important to give back, right? As I was given to, it's important for me to give back to other people and help them achieve the goals that they have. So I can never see any, downturn or bad side in volunteering your time, volunteering your knowledge, volunteering your experience to uplift other people, because some people just need motivation. Some people just need the motivation to achieve. Some people just need someone to talk to them and push them, motivate them to achieve what they want. Just because of the local environment they find themselves, that doesn't really push them or kills their dreams, right? Let's be honest. So sometimes it's just about talking to those people, extending a helping hand in order to uplift them to achieve their dreams. And that's what I'm exactly about.
Thank you.
I'm about uplifting others.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So, so beyond just being a student and volunteering, even as somebody who's got a full-time job, there's also an opportunity for you to volunteer and
Absolutely.
also give back to the community. So if you're looking for a place to start your volunteerism, please reach out to us at AfriMine. We would be more than willing to have you on board to assist us and to also help us broadcast what we do to the public. And on that note, I think it's important to just let you know that we've come to an end of this conversation. So if you have one last word or one last sentence, what would it be to us and to everybody listening out there?
Honestly, I know it can be really tough because I haven't specifically done my university studies in Africa, but I just don't want you to give up on your dream. Don't give up on your dream. That's what I have to say. Do not give up on your dream, because I can tell you with my experience that I had here, I could never think, mark my word, Toby, I could never have imagined being working for a company of such magnitude like Caterpillar. Best believe it. So resilience, right? Be resilient and do not give up on your dream. I can tell you that's the best advice I ever received since I started my life here in the US at age 16. Don't give up on your dream and keep being resilient. We're in a dominated industry, right? For me specifically as a lady, right? Male dominated, I'm very young and I'm working with people that have like 30 years of experience. But how do I make the best out of both worlds? How do I make sure that I get the knowledge and experience from these people and make good use of it in order to further my career and put myself out there, right? To the right people. How do I network with the people that can help me achieve some of the dreams, the global dreams that I have for the future? Be resilient and don't give up on your dream. That's what I can tell you. Get your grades up, technical experience, and network. So it's two things. Your motivation, personal motivation, be resilient, don't give up. And on the other side, get your grades up, have your technical knowledge, and network with people. That's the perfect sauce. Perfect combo.
Thank you. Thank you. So if you have a question, please use